you're having a hard time being motivated, it's probably because of how you're thinking about it. And what we just said in the last question can definitely apply. But I want to give a little bit more help. Okay, a lot of times people say, I don't feel like it, or I'm just not motivated. And what I want you to know about motivation is great when you have it, but it kind of if you don't. If you are waiting for motivation to show up, you're probably going to be disappointed at least half of the time. You are listening to the Decluttering Club podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Mueller, and it's my mission to equip women to declutter their homes, their time, and their lives so that they can cherish what truly matters. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Decluttering Club podcast, episode number 19. Today is Q&A day. Okay, so I emailed out my list. If you're not on my list, you need to get on that email list. There's a link somewhere along with this video in the show notes. But I emailed my list, and I also asked on Instagram. And I said, what questions do you have for me? Because let's have a Q&A episode. Why not, right? So I'm going to go through these questions. I have just briefly glanced at them. I haven't prepared anything in advance. I thought it'd be fun to just go off the cuff and, for me to answer all of the questions that got sent in, more or less spontaneously. Okay, so here's the first question. And this one is from Sample Teresa on Instagram. She says, how do I get started when my whole house is a complete mess? This is a super common question. If you feel like your whole house is a complete mess, first of all, is that true? Maybe it is true, right? Maybe every single room needs a ton of work. That may be. But I encourage you to think about how are you talking about your house? Because if you think my whole house is a complete mess, you're probably feeling pretty discouraged or pretty overwhelmed, right? And when we are feeling overwhelmed and discouraged, we are probably not cleaning things up. We are not folding laundry. We are not decluttering. We are not answering the mail and dealing with the bills, okay? And then our house just stays a mess. Okay, so you want to be careful in how you think about and how you talk about your house. Okay, so I would suggest that maybe instead of saying my whole house is a complete mess, you could say, I've got a lot of work to do and I'm going to get started, right? That could be a more motivating thought for you. Now, what are you going to do? Let's say you've got a good attitude or you're ready to get started. You want to do some work on this. What do you do? Right? And we have a number of questions like this that are kind of the same flavor. How do I get started? What do I do if my whole house is a complete mess? My answer is you just want to start somewhere, right? And honestly, you guys, it really doesn't matter where you start. I know you all don't believe me necessarily when I say this, but it's true. It doesn't matter where you start. But what does matter is this. First of all, it matters that you do start, okay? If you don't start, then you can never actually make progress, of course. It also matters that you pace yourself. So a lot of times when we think, everything is a disaster, there's like this sense of urgency, or there's some panic. And you think, oh my goodness, I need to get this done now. And then we freak out, we panic, and either we freeze, right? That is very common. Or if we don't freeze, then we go into panic cleaning mode, which does not feel good, which burns us out, which may have some short-term benefits, but in the long term, you're not going to want to be panic cleaning every time you need to clean up your house. Okay, so you want to pace yourself. You want to do what we call zooming in. Okay, so if the whole kitchen needs work, I want you to zoom in. And what does that mean? Imagine a camera zooming in, and you pick one spot, and maybe it's the sink. So you wash the dishes in the sink, and then you say, I wash the dishes, and then you walk away, and you take a break, and you let yourself rest. And then maybe you come back, and then you declutter a drawer, or you declutter a pile of papers, or something like that, right? But you zoom in, and you take it a little bit at a time, okay? If you take things a little bit at a time, and if you are using the techniques that we're teaching you here, you will make progress over time. But it takes a minute. It takes a little while. It's not going to happen overnight. Okay, so just relax a little bit and tell yourself, I'm willing to learn and I'm willing to be in this for the long haul. I'm not going to fix this today or tomorrow, and that's okay. There's plenty of time, and I can get the help that I need. Okay? All right. Next question. This one's from Mama Babs 65, and she says, I cannot just get started. How do I get motivated? Okay, if you're having a hard time being motivated, it's probably because of how you're thinking about it. And what we just said in the last question can definitely apply. But I want to give a little bit more help. Okay, a lot of times people say, I don't feel like it, or I'm just not motivated. And what I want you to know about motivation is great when you have it, but it kind of sucks if you don't. If you are waiting for motivation to show up, you're probably going to be disappointed at least half of the time. And that is no good, right? We don't actually want to wait to feel motivated. Okay, you can actually declutter, you can do the dishes, you can clean up, you can let things go without being motivated. And this is news to a lot of people. They kind of think, well, I got to feel like it, don't I? Actually, you don't. You don't have to love the job. You don't have to feel like doing the work in order to get the work done. Okay, so what do you do instead? Here's what you do. Ideally, you join one of our challenges. Hopefully there's a challenge going on, in the near future, and you're participating in that. That will actually help a lot. Okay, but if there's not a challenge coming up, or if you just need to get something done, let's say today, you're trying to get motivated. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to decide what you're going to do. What needs to happen? What is your task? Is it filing some papers? Is it putting away craft supplies? Is it, cleaning out the garage? What is your task very, very specifically? Name it. Write it down if possible. And then I want you to decide, when are you going to do it? Right? Are you going to do it, tomorrow at 9 a.m.? Are you going to do it today after lunch? And again, keep it small if possible. We don't want to burn ourselves out. We don't want to go in and spend hours and hours and then hate ourselves and feel miserable. But when are you going to do it? And then I want you to just get it done, right? When that time comes, you get up and you get busy. And the thing about motivation is frequently it will show up. It's almost like a reward. So if you get up and get in motion and you start working on that garage, and you have, you're using some of the tools that we've taught you, after you're a little ways in, you're probably going to start feeling like it. Now, you may not love that job. There's probably all kinds of things you might rather do, but you will feel some momentum over time, and then it will get easier. Okay, so don't wait for the motivation. Just decide what you're going to do, decide when you're going to do it, and then get up and go. Okay, next question. All right, this one is from Alexander 422, and she says, what do you do if you just don't have a designated place to put things? The miscellaneous pile grows fast. I get it. So I think there's two ways this can go. One way is that you don't really have any room to put things away. I hear this a lot from people. They say, I have some things out, maybe they're on a counter or maybe they're on the floor, and you're telling me I don't have anywhere to put them, right? My storage spaces are all full. Okay, so if that is the case, this is basically like a math problem. This is an equation. And the answer is you got to let something go, right? If you don't have anywhere to put something needs to go. Or you don't put it away. That's an option too, right? But we don't like that option. Something needs to go. And so if your storage spaces are all full, I highly recommend that you don't really spend a lot of time putting things away, that your focus is on what can leave the house right now. What can leave the house today or this week? And focus in on that. Okay, you need to free up space before you can put things away. Right. The second part of that question is, let's say you do have some storage space, but you don't have a designated place for XYZ. Right. Well, the thing about a designated place, how do we know where something belongs? Like there's no hard and fast rules about where things should go. Do you know how we know where things should go? We just decide where to put things. So if you don't have a designated place for something, you just got to pick a designated place. And it's literally that simple. I I think what hangs people up a lot is that they're like, well, I can't decide where to put it. I don't know where to put it, right? And then they kind of just throw up their hands. The thing about that is that when you say, I don't know, or I can't decide, you're just giving up all your power. And you're also probably saying, I think there's a right answer here, and I don't know what it is, so I'm just going to stop, right? But that's not the way this works. The way that it works, if you want to be able to put something away, is that you just decide, where do I want this to go, right? A lot of times people like to say, where would I look for this when I want to find it later? Okay, so not where do I want to put it away, but where do I want to retrieve it from? Where am I going to remember that it is? And then put it there. You may have to experiment a little bit, right? Maybe you put it, in the left cupboard on the bottom shelf. And you try that for a little while, and then you realize, that's really not a great place. I think it needs to go over here. It may require some trial and error, but the key here is that you are the one who decides where the designated place is. And I want to suggest that there are no miscellaneous piles. Like if we have a miscellaneous pile, that's just kind of saying, I really don't feel like making a decision here. And so I'm just giving that up, and I'm gonna wait until later to figure that out. But I'm telling you, it's not gonna be any easier later to make the decision than it is right now. So just pick something, put it there, and see how it goes. You can always move it later, okay? And you're not wrong, right? There's no wrong answers here. So don't worry about being wrong, because that's not a thing when putting things away. Okay, next question. This is from Many Teapots. Where do I find the energy to maintain when life is tiring? So why is life so tiring? This is my first question. Why is life so tiring? If life is super tiring, then I would love to dig into that. And that could be something you can journal on. Why am I so tired? A lot of times we are tired because of all the decisions that we are making. And maybe it's decluttering decisions. Maybe it's decisions about, what to cook for dinner, or what to keep or what not to keep, or, all of that. But decision fatigue is actually a real thing and can really wear you out. All right. So dig in a little bit. Why are you so tired? And can we do something about that? A lot of times the things that we do when we're tired are not refreshing. They do not recharge us. Right. So if you're super tired, and maybe you're physically tired, or maybe you're just emotionally tired. Maybe you just got up and you're already tired. It's not your body that's tired, but it's your mind that's tired. A lot of the things that we do when we are emotionally tired do not recharge us. And this can be things like going on Facebook or watching Netflix or, browsing, some kind of shopping, right? We kind of think this is a good way to rest. But if you don't end that activity feeling recharged, then it's actually not a good way to rest. And it may even be wearing you out more. So be really careful what you're doing when you are tired. And then the last thing I want to say about this particular question is a lot of times we think, okay, I'm going to dig in and I'm going to work on this closet or this space. I'm going to declutter this space. But I'm so tired, right? But again, it's not your body that's tired. It's your mind that's tired. And so can you do a little bit, right? Can you do a little bit? Can you have the long term in mind, even if it's kind of hard in the short term, right? A lot of times we can do a lot more than we think. We really can. And sometimes we want to give ourselves grace, but sometimes we need to give ourselves a kick in the pants and get moving because it will benefit us in the long term. Right? I can't tell you how many times I've had go to the gym on my plan for the day. I don't really feel like it. Kind of tired, right? But I do it anyway because I know it's going to benefit me in the long term and because I've taken care of myself. Right? I'm making sure that I meet my own needs, and then this fits into the bigger plan. So keep those kinds of things in mind when you are decluttering. All right, let's see. What's our next question? All right, I have some questions from our email list. All right, this is a good one. This is from Cindy, and she said, how can I be 98% done and not finished to my satisfaction? I don't know what your particular answer is, but I have some thoughts that you could try on. right? So if you're like 98% done and you're like, it's still not good enough, it's still not good enough. Is that your voice? Like, do you really believe that? Or is that like that voice in your head that's like your negative inner voice? I read a book by a guy called Michael Singer, amazing book. And he talks about how we kind of, all of us kind of have this voice inside our head. And it's a little bit like an annoying roommate, right? And this voice says things like, oh, that's not good enough. Or, you shouldn't have said that. Or what a dumb thing that you did, or you don't look very good today, you look kind of tired. This voice is like commentary inside our heads, and it goes on all the time. And if this was a real person sitting next to us on the couch, we'd probably would make them leave. We would not let them continue to be our roommate. But because it's inside our head, we accept it as being true, and we don't ever question it. So I want you to question, like, is it not good enough to your satisfaction? What did you want things to look like? Like, what would 100% look like for you, right? And is it really true that that it's not done to your satisfaction? Or is this just like some nagging inner doubt, that's kind of a pattern and that you kind of let go of, all right? People do frequently have a hard time finishing things, but if you're getting all the way to 98% and you're still not satisfied, like, being satisfied is a choice. It's a decision that you get to make, right? So you can just decide, I am done right now. This is exactly the way I want it. This is exactly perfect. And that's a choice that you can make at any time, all right? There's nobody outside of you that can tell you that you're wrong there. This is just your opinion. And so it gets to be whatever you want it to be, all right? Okay, next question. This one's from Ginny. And she says, what's the best way to keep going on this decluttering mission after many years of being on a decluttering journey? What I have now in my unfinished storage may have been intentionally kept, but not if in my main living spaces. It's also not in high use, which means it might be organized clutter. Any advice is welcome. So it sounds like she has things in storage. They're not in the way, right? Maybe she decided to keep them, but now she's kind of thinking maybe it's time to take a look at those things in storage. And how do I do that, right? And so this does get a little bit more challenging, right? If things are underfoot, then you're probably more motivated to deal with them, and you have more incentive. If they're out of sight, out of mind, right? This is what happens with storage units too. Like, we don't really have a huge reason to deal with them because they're not bugging us every single day. So it's just going to take a little bit more effort, a little bit more discipline to dig in there and to work through those items. So I think the first thing I would say is, why do you want to do that? Like, what's the reason that you want to declutter those areas? Maybe you just don't want your children to have to deal with it. Maybe you think, well, sooner or later, we're going to have to empty this out. Maybe, like for me, I kind of think, well, this is where I am, and I'm kind of an extreme case at this point. I don't want anything in my house that I'm not using, like, period. I do not want things around, even if they're in storage, that we are not using pretty regularly. We do have a Christmas tree, okay, so that's once a year. But I just don't want it in the house. I would rather have empty storage, empty shelves in the basement than have things on there that we're not using. Someone else can use them or maybe not, right? But that's like my priority. But it took me a long time to get there. So that's what I would do. I would realize it's going to take a little bit more discipline. It's going to take a little bit more energy to deal with those things that are out of sight, out of mind. Figure out why you want to do it, and then you make a plan, and then you execute on your plan, right? And then that is challenging in and of itself, and we have tools for that as well. Next question. Okay. This one's from Jean. She says, how to best get ready to put the house up for sale? We're having a really hard time. I think there is an order to do this, but we're all over the place trying to prepare to move from a house we've lived in for over 30 years to an apartment half the size. Okay, moving is an amazing time to declutter. Amazing. It's also very stressful, so I get it. And when you are moving, this is the time to be ruthless. Ruthless. I'm telling you, if you can avoid picking that thing up packing it, moving it, unpacking it, finding a new home for it. That's like 5 tasks you have eliminated if you can just let that item go. Like your return is 1 to 5. If you let that thing go, you have avoided 5 activities that you have to do with it. So this is the time. If you were ever kind of on the fence about something, maybe we want to keep it, maybe not, I'm going to encourage you to let that item go. Okay? And this applies to things like, especially the bigger things, furniture. Does that furniture fit in your new house? Is it in good condition? Does it make sense to pay or to do the physical activity to lift it? Be really, really clear on that, because I'm telling you, you always move more than you think. Even if you think you've been ruthless, you're going to find stuff that you're like, why did we move this, right? How many times have you unpacked a box that you did move a couple years ago, 10 years ago, and you're like, we never opened this box? This happens all the time. And so when you move, you're paying either with your dollars to have the moving company do it, or you're paying with your muscles. And either way, it is a tremendous price. So I really encourage you to be ruthless. I would go room by room. Okay, maybe I would do the most used rooms first: kitchen, bedroom, bathroom. And Jean, you mentioned that you were going to downsize by about half. That's the size of the new place, is about half. So I would aim to get rid of half of your things, and maybe more, right? If you feel like your house right now is too cluttered, is more cluttered than you want it to be, then maybe you go, we're going to get rid of 2/3, right? And that could be a really good rule of thumb, couldn't it? If you have, if you say, we have 10 cupboards in the kitchen and we really need to empty out about 4 of them or 3 of them, that could be a great rule of thumb for you to make progress there and kind of keep in line with where you need to go. But in general, be ruthless and go room by room, right? And see what you can get out the door. Next question. Okay. I'm wondering where to sell collectibles that are actually worth something. I know that many and this is from Barbara, I know many collectibles are essentially worthless these days, like Hummel statues, etc., while some are worth effort to monetize. I'm wondering where, other than eBay, are worthwhile. Okay, so here's the thing about collectibles. Okay, here's the thing. They may or may not be worth something, and the only way you know if they're worth something is if you can find a buyer. That is like the definition of something being worthwhile. Now, people get frustrated with me because I'm like, these things may or may not be worth your time. You need to decide how much is your time worth. And just because you paid a certain amount for it doesn't mean you're going to get that amount back or even half of it, right? The only way something is worth something is if someone will give you money for it, right? It's not worth anything if no one will pay. Okay, and that is the unfortunate truth. Now, there's lots of places to go. You can go to, you can get like things appraised, really depending on what it is. You can go and search on eBay. You can search completed auctions. You can search some of the more specific websites. There's a couple for clothing. I would Google that. But before I would do that, I would put a time limit on your time. How much time do you want to invest in researching your item? Is it 1 hour? Is it 10 hours? Right? Put that time limit on there and then stick to that, right? Because here's the thing about collectibles. You're not losing money if you let something go. Your bank account balance does not change when something leaves your house, right? Now, it may go up if you sell that item, but it's not going down if you give the item away. It's not, right? So by definition, that means you're not losing money by letting things go, no matter how much they're worth. You're not. Now, our brains are like, but there's potential, right? And we just really are trying to protect ourselves from mistakes and from feeling bad later, right? That is why we hesitate to let something go, because we think, well, I might find out that somebody sold that Beanie Baby for $100 and I let mine go, and so that means I lost $100. It doesn't mean you lost $100. It just means they sold theirs, right? It doesn't mean that you could have sold yours. And you're certainly not $100 poorer because your bank account didn't change, okay? You want to factor in your time. You want to factor in your well-being. You want to factor in the space in your home. We are so quick to sacrifice our time, our well-being, our space over a few dollars here and there that isn't necessarily even a sure thing, right? So just be super careful with that. I don't have specifics in where I can direct you, and I really don't want you to, because I don't want you to spend a ton of time on that. I think most things are not nearly as valuable as people think they are. I would say 90% of the things, really, it's just much better for people to let them go. All right, next question, a couple more. Any best ways to sort paper, mail, etc.? This is from Carol. So we don't go for best around here. Like, any way that you want to sort, any way that works for you, I'm on board. There's so many ways to deal with paper and mail. We do have a whole course. It's called Household Paperwork Made Easy, and it teaches our system, my system, from handling all paper and mail. Couple tips for you. First of all, deal with your mail every single day, every day. And if you miss a day, catch up the next day, okay? That will save you so much time. It will save you a lot of grief too. So always, always, always handle the mail. And then beyond that, I recommend having what we call a command center, which is where you can put, let's say, bills that are waiting for you to pay them, or, concert tickets. A lot of stuff now is virtual, but if you have, tickets or RSVPs or someone's business card that you need short term, that can go in your command center. That can also be your inbox. That can be a place for things that you're waiting to file. And then you want to deal with maintenance every single week. We encourage you to have what we call an office day. So once a week, you go through your command center, you go through your inbox, and you process any papers that have come in the door, right? And if you do this once a week, it may take half an hour, it may take more, maybe it's less, but over time you'll get into that routine, and you can chip away at the backlog, and then paperwork won't be such a big problem, okay? I do consider, like, anything new that comes in the door, that is a separate task from any backlog. So maybe you have 10 years of files that you want to sort through. That's separate from new stuff that comes in the door. And I encourage you to handle those two tasks separately. I would start with, what are we going to do with the new things that come in the door? Let's get that one, dialed in. Let's get that system working. And then dedicate some extra time to dealing with the backlog of papers that you want to sort through or file or shred or anything like that. All right. And again, we have a whole course on that. If you want more details, it's called Household Paperwork Made Easy, and it is available on the website. All right. Okay, one more. This one is from Dawn. She says, how do you show up for yourself and hold yourself accountable? I love this question. Thank you for this one, Dawn. This is good. How do you show up for yourself and hold yourself accountable? I think it's so easy, especially if you are like me. And maybe you're a little bit of a people pleaser. I'm a recovering people pleaser. But it's so easy and we're caretakers, right? It's easy for us to show up for other people. We would never dream of making plans with someone. Let's say your best friend. Make plans with her. You say, okay, we're going to go to lunch, right? And then that time comes and you just don't show. And she's waiting for you at lunch and she's like, what happened? You would never do that to your best friend. Never. I mean, it would have to be an emergency, and at least you would let her know. But we do this to ourselves. We're like, oh, it doesn't matter. I'll do it later. I don't feel like it. I'm not motivated, right? And we bail on ourselves. And over time, when we bail on ourselves, when we're not showing up for ourselves, then we stop trusting ourselves. And, no wonder. Right? Because if someone is going to be untrustworthy with you, if you can't rely on them to do what they said they were going to do, of course you're not going to trust them. And so that's what happens with ourselves. So I encourage you to start setting little goals, like making little commitments to yourself and then sticking to them no matter what. Imagine that, that commitment is to your very best friend. And that if you bail or ghost her, then, that's to your best friend, not to yourself. You want to build up that confidence and know that your word is ironclad, all right? Ironclad. And when you have that with yourself over time, it's the most amazing thing ever. And then you can show up for yourself. And then you can make decisions and show up for other people, but in a way that's not at your own expense. Because that's what happens frequently is we're so busy showing up for others, we got nothing left for ourselves. And so no wonder, okay? But what I want to encourage you to do is kind of flip it. Like show up for yourself first, decide, what's the non-negotiable for you? What do you need to give you? And then you can give to others. And then you can do that without being resentful, without being bitter. And it feels so good. Now, it's not easy. It really isn't. It's so much easier to be like, oh, it's okay, right? Like, I'll do it tomorrow. I know I said I would work on paperwork today, but I don't really feel like it. But when you do show up for yourself and when you build that trust and that commitment over time, it is going to change your life. And then you will be able to do anything that you want to do, and you'll have that confidence. We've got lots of tools about how that works as well inside of our membership. If you are a member, make sure you come in the group. If you need help with that, please do reach out and ask us. But yeah, that is a skill that I highly encourage you to work on and to grow and to develop that skill over time. Really, really powerful skill. All right, that is what I have for you today. That was a bunch of questions. Super good. We'll do this again in the future. But that's all I have for you to know. That's all we have for you today. If you enjoyed this podcast, would you leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts? It would really help us get the word out. To start your decluttering journey, go to thedeclutteringclub.com/start. That's declutteringclub.com/start.